Welcome back to Nick Lenz Comic Corner, classics, that's non-classics. This ep- this is episode number 1113, and Doubleshot number 1007. I got two DC trades. One is a Batman book, and the other is from a Batman writer that features a Batman character. First up, it is Batman Knightsend. This is the first of the three final trades that's part of the third printing of the Nightfall saga. Yep, this collects Batman 509 to 510, Batman Shadow the Bat number 29 to 30, Detective Comics 676 to 77, Batman Legends of the Dark Knight 6263, Robin Robin Volume 4 8 through 9, and Catwoman Volume 2 issues 12 13, and Showcase 94 number 10. Yep. Now, the first half of the saga is simply Bruce Wayne trying to get back his senses basically very quickly. But here's the thing. The first thing is to start with Batman. Starts out with Lady Shiva. Yes, Lady Shiva. Those of you who are not comic fans and are vaguely familiar with the character thanks to her recurring appearances on the show Beware the Batman, Lady Shiva is a character created by the awesome Daniel O'Neil, who appeared in the Richard Dragon series. Yeah, she made her first appearance there, and that was also the series of the first appearance of Bronze Tiger. And she's also known for being the mother of Cassandra Cain and the lover of David Cain. Yes, I am not kidding. Yeah, that's the thing with David Cain. Like, he's more known for sleeping with Lady Shiva than being a regular assassin. That's David Cain for you. And Lady Shiva still exists in the current continuity. And they kept the fact she's still Cassandra Cain's mother. But this is years before this is like, because when this came out, because she already debuted in No Man's Land was like in 2000. This came out in like 1984, I think it was. Yeah, this is like 94. Yeah, and she wears this outfit where she wears this helmet that looks like a bat totem. Now, the writers of this thing mainly are just Chuck Dixon, Doug Moak, and Alan Grant. Joe Duffy just has a hand in the Catwoman issues. Doug Moak does the Batman issues. Chuck Dixon does Detective Comics, Lenz, and Robin. Shadow the Bat is done by Alan Grant. Mary Jo Duffy does Catwoman. And I think Showcase is done by Chuck Dixon, if I'm not mistaken. Yes. Each part basically, like part one is basically from now this is this is like a 8-part story. Mainly with like three epilogues. Part 1 comes from Batman number 509. That's part 1. Part 2 I think comes from it's like Batman Shadow the Bat number I think it's number 30 if I'm 29 if I'm mistaken. Let's see, I think it is. But basically, one thing at least got praised with this trade, it does print these issues in order they came out. Yeah, when they were released. Mm-hmm. Let's see here. Now, while basically Bruce Wayne's taken on a way to rebuild back his strength, we have Azrael basically just confronting, trying to deal with seeing Saint Dumas, who's seen as an illusion. Yeah, part 2 is from issue 29 Shadow Bet, which is a 48-page special. Yeah. By the way, this cover is done by Brian Surflees, and I believe he did the covers for like the first 75 issues of this very series. Yeah, that's something interesting though. He did the cover art for pretty much all that. Yep. And that's part 3. Part 2. Yeah. Part 3 is from Detective Comics number 876. So you're probably thinking, wait, is Legends Dark Knight like part 4? You probably think so, and yeah, it is. Yep. So yeah, that's what they print this thing. It's like whatever. Yeah, it's like 509 is part 1, Shadow of the Bat 29 is part 2, part 3 is Detective Comics 676, part 4 is Dark Knight 62. I think 5 is like 510. I think it's like, let's see. Let's see. Part 6 is from Catwoman. Part 5 is from Robin. Yes, Part 5 is from Robin. And I actually got Chuck Dixon to sign that issue 8. Yes. Part 7 is from Batman 510. Part 8 is from Shadow the Bat number 30. Though it's not the end of the thing. I think because it's almost like a 10-part conclusion. Yeah. Detective Comics 677 is part 9, which I believe is the conclusion. I don't think is the conclusion to it, no. Part 10 is from Legends of Darkness 63. Yeah, part 10. And then basically, like, Robin 9 and Catwoman 13 and Showcase 94 number 10 are just 3 Aftermath issues. Yeah, pretty much is not until part 5 Bruce Wayne puts back on his Batman costume. Well, it's the costume he wore prior to Nightfall. Well, prior to Bane breaking his back. That was the costume he was wearing. And he fights Azrael for several issues, and, well, John Paul Valley while he's in his bat costume. And then he defeats him. And, well, then he switches back to his Azrael costume. It's mostly his, from what I can tell, his first appearance costume. Yeah, he decided to switch back to this. It's basically kind of like, okay, let's switch back to this particular costume, which is simply put his regular, like, Azrael costume. I think it's his debut outfit, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, this is it right here. Where his outfits turn red. Yep. And also, Dick Grayson, if you're wondering like about his costume as Nightwing, he's wearing his... From what I can tell, this is not his original attire. This is his outfit he got from his Titans book. When he was bringing New Titans during Titans Hunt. That's when he got this costume. And it's great, though, the fact that you can kind of think of it with the exception of Batman and Shadow the Bat and Catwoman. You can kind of say that most of this entire event, everything in here is done by Chuck Dixon. Yeah, Shadow the Bat, I think, is done by Chuck Dixon, if I'm mistaken. Because Mary Jo Duffy does the Catwoman issues. Yeah, this is done by Alan Grant, which is this is the only book. Now, the Aftermath issue is simply this. They mostly set up some other stuff, like in the case of what's going on with the finale for Knightsend, that sets up Prodigal, which has Dick Grayson take over as Batman for a brief period of time. Robin just simply put has book of forward after that particular event with Catwoman, just a usual thing. In the case of Showcase number 10, 94 number 10, that book is simply put kind of in a way set up for the Azrael ongoing series, which came right after this. Yep. And this particular event, this particular story is really, really good. It's kind of the end of the Nightfall saga, but not really. It's not the main part of the story, and there's a couple of crossovers that come right after this. Next is Prodigal, and then finally, Traka. Traka is the epilogue it's like the second epilogue for this particular event. Yeah. My personal guess is the reason why they extended this fact that I can kind of say this is kind of the end of it and just sets up stuff basically you see later. My personal guess is probably the marketing team for DC probably got in the way and had them do these couple little brief little things before they had basically go back to the way stuff was before Nightfall even happened, though with Batman with a brand new costume. This book, really good. I'm not really a fan of how Kelly Jones draws on these covers for how he draws. So let's say for the Azrael Batman. I mean, it looks so goofy of how he draws. And fun fact about this costume. Like, despite the fact he's no longer Batman, he actually does put back on this costume at the end of his ongoing series. How do I know this? I read the series online. It's a great thing to read. And he did this in his final, 10 issues of his series, where in the original 100 issue of Lime, done by Danny O'Neill, he wrote all 100 issues, by the way. Though he created the character, so he has every right to do that. He actually had Azrael put back on this costume and had him wear this costume for the last year of the comic before the comic ended with his death. Yeah, that's the thing when it comes to the Azrael comic. Actually, the final issue was when he died. Yeah. But this Really good. Give this book a 9.5 out of 10. Really good. Now, this next book is from a Batman writer, but it's not a Bat book. But it does feature a Batman character. We have Justice League Dark, Volume 3, The Witching War. Collecting issues, Justice League Dark, Volume 2, issues 14 and 19. We have Justice League Dark, which is basically the second person team, comprised of Wonder Woman, Swamp Thing, Satana, Man-Bat, Detective Chip, and 2 Dr. Fates. The original one and his great-nephew, Khaled, who is from the Dr. Fate book by Paul Levitz. And taking on the Injustice League Dark. I gotta hand it to Tinian. This was a fantastic stroke of genius. I mean, there already is an Injustice League already. Though the original version was basically comprised of a bunch of C-listers. But yeah, a version of this group for the Justice League Dark. Smart move on the part of James Tynion to do. And this group is comprised of Solomon Grundy, the Philonic Man, which is something though because prior to this, he was referring to himself as the Cedar in the Swamp Thing series by Charles Scholl. Yeah, Scholl was one who brought this guy in, not Scott Snyder. It's definitely not James Tynion. Tynion was not the one who brought him in. He's the one probably had him go back name Philonic Man, probably because it's more familiar than, let's say, the Cedar. Yep. Caliran the Witch Boy, who is bald for some reason. Yes, that's kind of the strange thing about Caliran, because last time he was seen, he had hair. And that was back in the pages of Secret 6 for a couple issues when they had the whole thing of magic being going crazy because of Black Alice. And now it's basically, this is like being plotted for the series. We also have Papa Midnight, who is an enemy of John Constantine. And this was actually his first appearance since I believe the Constantine the Hellblazer. I think he did show up in the Hellblazer comic book. But yeah, a little interesting to have him show up. And they're led by Cersei, who by the way is dressed like this and having the witch mark. Yeah, that was something from the Witch Hour crossover. It was a mini little event that crossed between Justice League Dark and Wonder Woman. Though oddly enough, I do not know why in the world they decided to have the crossover that soon. I mean, the Justice League Dark book had only been around for about half a year. So why at that point did he decide to do a crossover Wonder Woman? I have no idea. Probably because Wonder Woman was the only character in the book who actually had an ongoing series. Because if you look at the entire cast, like, Dr. Fate hasn't had a series, like, prior to him showing up in here. He hasn't had a series since 2016. Okay, Swamp Thing did have a mini-series prior to this, but the thing is, prior to this series starting up, his last series he appeared in was in Hellblazer. Well, the Hellblazer, during the first initial, he did appear in the first arc, and after that, he appeared in like a one-shot, then he appeared in here. Yeah. Santana, prior to this series starting up, she appeared in the Detective Comics. Also, James Tynion was basically... Yeah, it's interesting that James Tynion previously wrote the character in Detective Comics and wrote it again here. Wonder Woman, probably the one person who has... Oh yeah, John Constantine here, so he plays barely a role in this little event. Yes, Wonder Woman's most interesting choice. Now, she basically is known for... She basically is a supernatural-based character thanks to her being a demigoddess. Yeah, she's the daughter of Zeus. But here's the thing. I was not really a big fan of how... Now, the thing is, Tynion wrote the magical community basically disrespect Wonder Woman on purpose. Because Wonder Woman is a public figure. The supernatural community tend to be very secretive. Yeah. And this whole particular storyline is a tie-in to Year of the Villain. Yeah, it takes place during the Year of the Villain. Heck, they even had that thing where during the actual book itself, like I think about halfway through the story, we actually had that symbol pop up in the sky, which was mainly what was going to pages of Justice League. Yeah. You know, this. Yeah. This was actually in the sky for a lot of the DC comic books for a short period of time, thanks to, of course, Scott Snyder. It's almost like whatever's happening in Justice League had to be affected everywhere, because Justice League was treated like DC's flagship title. Yeah, that's one thing you at least got to appreciate with Scott Snyder. He makes the book feel epic. Tynion basically brings that epicness to Justice League Dark, which is mostly a lot of the time been a self-contained book. Like, if you read the original volume which was first done by it was basically first done by Peter Mulligan, and then Jeff Lemire took over. After Lemire left, you had Jan DeMatteis, who did previous rest of the series. Yeah, went through 3 writers in 40 issues. This book is roughly 2 years in, still the same writer. Yeah. Now, as far as I can tell, unlike Justice League comes out twice a month, this book comes out once a month. And like with Odyssey, only released like about 3 trades. Well, basically, Odyssey released only 2 trades so far. Well, in the case of this book, technically you can kind of count this as the 4th trade because you have the crossover trade. Yeah, and this book does something interesting though. You would see this as much in Justice League occasionally, where the villains actually infiltrate the base operations of Justice League Dark, which is actually in the Hall of Justice. Now, Dark being headquartered there is quite an interesting choice, because in the previous final for this series, they were headquartered at the House of Mystery. The only reason why they're headquartered out of the Hall of Justice is because of one of the members of the Justice League, the main group. And the actual cavalry underneath the Hall of Justice, the whole basically house a bunch of magical items, like a whole bunch of there's mention of the Upside Down Man here. We see like, if you read the Night Force series by Marv Wolfman, great series. Yeah, the mansion owned by Baron Winters. Yeah, it actually physically appears here. And we see appearance by John Zadara, the father of Zatanna. Which, that was an interesting idea to do, like him appear. Despite the fact he's supposed to be dead. I think, because I know the previous continuity he died. This one, it's implied he's dead, but they never really definitively said he was dead. This book is utterly fantastic. I love it. I give this book roughly a 9.5 out of 10. It's great by James Tynion. The artwork is done by 3 different artists. Alvaro Benito, Fernando Felito, and Javier Fernandez. The cover art is done by Gilliam March and Al Perino. Yeah. Now, Swamp Thing. Now, here's the interesting thing. This book does have the very next arc of the series, which deals in looking for Swamp Thing. Yeah, because the Pharaonic Man is there because he's a Swamp Thing villain, and mentioning, yeah, they have to go to the Rot and find Abby. When John Constantine is mentioned about Abby, he's like, okay, I understand. Now, it's perfectly understandable why he would understand about Abby. Why? Because John Constantine made his first appearance in a Swamp Thing comic book. Yeah, I think it was issue like 27, see, John Constantine is credited by Alan Moore. Keller and the Witch Boy, Jack Kirby. The Pharaonic Man, I think he was the creation of Gardner Fox. Solomon Grundy is actually oldest of all these characters. I believe I don't think he's a Gardner Fox creation. I don't remember who created him. Pup Midnight made his first appearance in Hellblazer #1, the original Hellblazer comic by Vertigo, one was published in the 80s. Now, what about Cersei, classic Wonder Woman villain, and I don't remember exactly when she first appeared. Yeah, Man-Bat doesn't do very much in here, aside from losing his mind, but yeah, great book. Highly recommended. Basically, people are fans of Justice League Dark. I would think my friend Timmy, he would probably read this book because of how awesome it is. The only characters I think he might be familiar with, he knows who Wonder Woman is, so that's not surprising. He has probably, as far as I can tell, he has a pretty good idea who Swamp Thing is. The only character you might not have a good idea who much about him is Dr. Fate. But I believe he knows who Detective Chimp is, because he's a long DC fan. He's a longer fan than I have. And I don't know when he started reading DC Comics. I started reading DC Comics in 2010. He probably was reading a little bit earlier than I was. And I read a lot of pre-Flashpoint stuff. And a lot of it's really good. Some of it's pretty good. Exception of the early 2000s. That era, from 2000 to about 2001, it's not a very good year for DC. Like some of the stuff, like for Batman was good during that period of time. Superman had some weird art style, but it was an odd time period for DC. But yeah, that's it for Cycler Review. My next review is another Comic Corner. And 2 more DC trades, one of whom is the last DC trade to be officially released for this character. The other is another volume for the trade. Yeah, that's interesting. You know, like one trade from that released issues from the 90s, the other one from very recently. Okay, to the next video. Bye.